how's it going, everybody? It is episode 75, a little milestone episode for us here on Hawaii Football Now. We appreciate everybody sticking around this long with us and enjoying the pod, hopefully as much as we are enjoying putting it together for you. Pretty big day. We record this on Wednesday, February 1st. It's about 9:10 a.m. in the morning. Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes alongside you here. It's the traditional signing day, right? For all those years before they got into the early signing period that we now know in December, this was the day. Like, this was one of the biggest days on the calendar. It is significantly diminished because so many of the high-profile recruits end up signing in the early period. But it's a big day nonetheless, and we wanted to kind of hold off until mid-morning on Wednesday to get the reaction of Hawaii's latest signees. As of now, they've added 4 to a class that now includes 30. What a really, really big class so far here for this 2023 signing period. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get into that for basically the duration of the show. In the second half, we've got our guy from ESPN Honolulu, Tanner Haworth, to join us. He's the guy who pays a lot of attention to the recruiting angle, nationally, as well as obviously from a Hawaii angle. You'll be familiar with him if you listen to basically any of the radio shows on the ESPN Honolulu networks, because he's filling in, he's running the board, he's doing all kinds of stuff, but a really bright guy. Looking forward to that.
Twitter hound.
And a Twitter hound that he is. He is very active on the Twitter, and is a lot of fun to kind of get a follow there. He's very interactive with a lot of the talking heads on Twitter, including some of the fans who, you know, sometimes are rational, sometimes are not, which is great because that's what makes them fans. And we appreciate that, especially when it comes to Hawaii football, because we need all the fans we can get. And I am all for the discourse on Twitter. It's a lot of fun there. All right. Before we get into anything, I do want to remind you that Hawaii Football Now is brought to you by Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. As Hawaii's largest credit union, they are committed to serving individuals and businesses through its 14 branch locations statewide and convenient digital banking services as well. As a leader in providing support for the islands, Hawaii USA is committed to strengthening Hawaii's financial wellness and sharing successes with members, local businesses, and the greater community. Visit hawaiiusafcu.com for more information. All right, as we mentioned, episode 75, before we get into some of the recruiting talk, our opening drive here to get things going, and we begin the episode on a bit of a somber note. I'm sure by now, right, as this is going to get released on Thursday, midday, February 2nd, already into the second month of the year. I think, you know, if you're a fan of our podcast, you're a fan of Hawaii football, and you're a fan of Hawaii sports, and you probably, like many of us, grew up, or most of your football fandom existed with one Jim Leahey as the voice behind the soundtrack that went along with some of the biggest victories, some of the crushing defeats, but everything in between for Hawaii sports, for Hawaii football. I'm sure you are aware by now, he unfortunately passed away on Monday. His family releasing the news to the public, passed away early Monday morning, and just a big blow. And I think you'll probably have seen a number of touching tributes, of kind of recaps on his impact, his incredible career, his incredible life, and just how awesome a guy he was, you know. And I think for anybody who's grown up in Hawaii watching the old K5 broadcasts, or even going back before that, right, KGU on the radio, and KGMB and KHNL when he was working in news, and then on to Oceanic when OC Sports took over the contract. His career spanning literal decades, you know, following in his father Chuck's footsteps, and obviously kind of passing the mantle to our guy Kanoa Leahey, who's now the main announcer, obviously, for a number of University of Hawaii sports. And we just wanted to send our sincere condolences to everybody with the Leahey family, Kanoa, and his immediate family, and really the greater University of Hawaii family, Hawaii sports family. Jim was as iconic as it gets, right? So many iconic calls. You felt like you knew him, right? He was the uncle kind of coming through your living room via the television sets, or that fatherly figure, right? Just a $1 million voice, And I'll just always remember, this poetic mastery of the English language. Like he was a teacher at heart. There are some fun stories out there of him, as an educator, spent like over about a decade teaching at Campbell High School before he really got into the broadcasting industry full time. But just this, it's, as a guy who's worked in media myself now, it's just it was always so impressive, this poetic mastery of the English language that was, sort of just tied to place, like tied to Hawaii, tied to Hawaii's team, to Hawaii's, sports programs, to Hawaii's people. He'd mix in, some of the Hawaii-isms. He'd mix in the Hawaiian language. And to do that with this really eloquent usage of the English language, I just thought was always so impressive, and so, quite honestly, unique. I mean, he was as good as anybody on the continent, as he called it, and had chances to call preseason Seahawks games for a time, and so he was everything that any of those guys on the continent could do. But he also worked in the Hawaii angle, and it was just always kind of cool and comforting, and that was our guy, right? And just a big loss, and he'll go down. He's in the University of Hawaii Circle of Honor, just as iconic as they come, and he'll surely be missed. Hadn't called a game for a little while, but those calls will live forever, man.
Yeah. I had an interesting conversation with Josh Pacheco on Monday, where we kind of got the early reaction to the passing, because him and I were covering for Kanoa on his show. And so obviously Kanoa couldn't make it. And hearing from Josh, the times where he was on the call with Mr. Leahey, similar sort of an encouragement from Mr. Leahey towards Josh of, hey, could we improve that? What word could you use instead? It was a teaching moment of, how do we improve this craft on a day-to-day basis? Very much like what you said, the heart of a teacher in this career as well. I'm not from Hawaii. I'm not going to pretend like I was born and raised out here. But hearing the force, from people like you, like Josh, other members of the media that we're friends with, how much of a force this guy was out here, it's really quite something. I can't help but relate it to where I'm from. I'm from Chicago. The passing of a guy like Harry Carey back in the late 90s, and we felt like we knew him. He was our sportscaster, and it was beyond just one specific team. He was the play caller of a city, and him passing in the late 90s, getting people to comment like Michael Jordan at the time, who in the late 90s was beyond time and space, and to mourn the loss of someone like that, it shows the impact of someone like Harry Carey or a Jim Leahey in this case. Really kind of marks the times, and you remember calls and how old you were, where you were at, who you were with during those times. And it really is bigger than sports. It's a cultural thing whenever you have someone. He was a sportscaster for 60 years, Jordan. 60 years. That's crazy when you look at everything that happened during that time. And we're going to miss him for sure.
Yeah. And I think that's well put. And quite honestly, some of my favorite, Jim Leahey memories as just a viewer or a consumer, were with Leahey and Leahey, the show he and Kanoa did on PBS, where they just sit in a kitchen and talk story, which I always just thought was so cool, because Dan Le Batard completely ripped off the idea on the Le Batard show, because Kanoa guys were doing that well before the ESPN show, where they're just sitting with his dad in a kitchen when it was like him and Bomani Jones doing that thing. But I think it really sort of showed you the human side of Jim. It was just him and his son talking story, and they'd obviously bring in guests, and they'd have, Pop's Poetry Corner and some of these really cool little segments that they do. But I think that's where you really saw uh a different side of Jim Leahey, right? Because when you're calling a game, I mean, the game is the focus, right? You're adding to that, but I think people really got to know him. How smart he was, how witty he was, how funny he was, just how intelligent and eloquent, and he and Kanoa get into fun debates and generational debates, right? I think what they call it, the generationally challenged sports discussion or something like that along those lines, right? If I can't even remember. And even when they used to do it on the radio before making it, kind of converting it to the television medium on PBS Hawaii. I always really enjoyed those. And then as I got to know Kanoa better, who, I consider a really close friend, it even more so, it became more and more interesting to kind of see their banter and going back and forth, and I think just enjoying each other, right? And the proud dad that he was of Kanoa, and how his career was going and whatnot. So those are some of my favorite memories, just, beyond even, calling games, really, really, really impactful life, impactful career. And as you were pointing out with Josh sharing some of those stories, he was always quick to mentor, always quick to try and lend a helping hand to guys that, were trying to make it in the industry, whether they be on the broadcast side, whether they were in, working on the newspaper side or whatever. I think you've heard a lot of that. And we'll miss him. We'll miss him dearly. That's for sure. So again, our aloha out to Kanoa, the rest of the Leahey family as well. And I'm sure we'll have a few more stories to share as the weeks go on. No doubt about that. So we'll make the transition here from our opening drive into the game time. We'll get talking some signing day action for the University of Hawaii, as they are kind of kicking into full gear with spring practices just around the corner. All right, game time here on Hawaii Football Now. Jordan and Hunter with you. Again, we've got Tanner Haworth of ESPN Honolulu coming up in just a moment, really, as we get into the second half of the pod. But before we get there, a little abbreviated first half here. Just wanted to kind of quickly cover the four guys that have signed so far here on Wednesday, February 1st, adding to the already 26 who were inked in the first signing period. I think the highest profile of the four signings, Hunter, is probably Domata Peko Jr., right? He was a guy who had verbal to Hawaii, kind of backed off of that, went to the Polynesian Bowl. It kind of seemed like it was coming down between Hawaii and San Jose State. He's a 6'4", 220-pound athlete, listed as kind of play defensive end, a guy who can just get after the quarterback, a guy who can kind of play all over the field. Went to Calabasas High School in Calabasas, California. He is the son of 15-year NFL veteran Domata Peko, 3-star recruit per 24/7. I think he's the biggest get of this group so far. And then you got 3 defensive backs. Coach Abe is going to need a bigger meeting room, I think, when it comes to DBs, because they have signed a ton of dudes, including high school senior DeLine Freeman, 5'11", 170 from Noonan, Georgia, East Coweta High School. He's a dude who can run, really speedster. Ezekiel Rodriguez, who we had talked about in previous pods, had verbal. He officially signed today. The 6'1", 190-pound high school senior from Kaneohe. He went to Mililani High School. And then you've also got a junior college guy, a 6-foot senior DeMarco Moorer from Moreno Valley, California, Riverside City College. Put up some impressive numbers: 12 picks, 94 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss in his time at Riverside City College. So that now makes 30 total, 4 in this window. Of the 30, 21 defensive signings. They have very much emphasized the defensive side of the ball. I think that's 9 DBs now, if I'm counting correctly, Hunter. Tanner might be able to fill us in there. But your reaction so far to these 4 guys, and if by the time we finish recording they add anybody to the list, we'll add that in.
Anytime you bring new guys into what we've got cooking here with the Braddahhood and this marketing story that we are committing to, it's exciting. and you can't help but focus on Damata Peko. And, he's a 3-star. Anytime you can get anybody with a star next to their name to University of Hawaii, that's a tremendous accomplishment with recruiting. So again, tip of the cap to this coaching staff and getting that accomplished. There's so much that goes into that. And this coaching staff continues to impress, even in just their first year and change of taking the job. Some guys not even a year yet, with Timmy Chang getting hired last February. So very, very impressive. Yeah, I'm still kind of working out my initial thoughts, Jordan, especially with 21 of our 30 guys coming on the defensive side of the football. There's some, initial obvious thoughts of not all of those guys are going to have space to play, at least not yet immediately. We kind of talked about it before the show, just for a brief second, about there's guys that are going to be ready to play, whether they've come in the transfer portal, whether they are coming from, junior college, and those guys are ready to make an impact right off the bat. I got to imagine if you're a 3-star son of a 15-year NFL veteran like Peko is, you would think he's going to get a chance on the field right off the bat. That's just what needs to be done if you're a high-profile player like that. But I'm intrigued to see kind of more what the purpose is behind stacking a defense like this. We're just now in year 2 of this new transfer portal, NIL, new reality of college football. And you can't help but wonder, are they doing this because they're wondering guys are inevitably going to leave? And that's just the way it is in this new climate that we find ourselves in with college football. You can't help but start to wonder if there's some other new ways of recruiting, putting a team together, creating this thing that we can kind of morph and adjust to on a year-to-year basis, because it's so different now. But 21 guys on the defensive side of the football, it doesn't take a brainiac to realize you can only play 11. So, and with 30 guys for a signing class, that's a big class, Jordan. With just north of 100 guys on the roster, that's more than a quarter right there of your entire roster just coming in with this signing class. So very interesting. I'm sure Tan Man will help us dive in deep with some of these guys, but it's going to be interesting to say the least.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you bring up in terms of, what exactly is the thought process, right? I mean, you're going out, you're trying to fill needs. We talked a little bit about that with the early recruiting class. That look, they clearly targeted the defensive line. They clearly targeted the defense in total. They clearly targeted the offensive line, right? Where none here today, but a few back in December. And so those were areas where they lose a lot, the graduation, matriculation, as well as, look, they just need to get better at some of these positions, right? And so, yeah, with the portal, how things work out, are you looking at project guys to kind of, are you looking for ready to play guys? Are you looking for the project guys to kind of be waiting in the wings when some of the other guys maybe inevitably make their way to the portal to bigger program? Yeah, it's kind of a delicate balance. I'm curious to see, and we'll try to get some of the coaches on as we get through spring and summer to kind of talk about that, because they were facing a difficult task, right? Really, this is the first full recruiting window for the entire coaching staff, and there was a ton of turnover last season, which meant they needed a whole bunch of stopgap, fill in the plug-in guys, and some of those guys were going to only be here for a year, and then you got to refill again. So, the cycle continues on, right? And hopefully they get some guys that can stick. And obviously, with 3 of the 4 here today being high school guys, you hope that they're here for a while.
Yeah, totally. And yeah, that's one thing. And as this recruiting class is kind of coming to a point, I know we're going to let Tanner on here in just a second and dive real deep into all of this, but one of the other position groups that we kind of identified needing a lot of help was the receiving crew, and only bringing 4 guys in is interesting to me. I'm not going to critique it just yet. It's interesting. As we are shifting to the run and shoot, they must really feel confidently that at least right off the bat, we have pieces in place that can run that and run it well. I think back to whenever Rolo made that shift over, we really only relied on brand new receiver, and that was Nick Mardner at the time. I'm just thinking of guys that hadn't been on the roster for a couple of years. We relied on guys for chemistry, for working together for a little bit of time, and the beef of that wide receiver core with Cedric Bird, JoJo Ward, and Jason Matthews Sharsh as well as a few other guys. But that was kind of the meat and potatoes right there. So for those wondering, like myself, did we bring in enough receivers? Did we bring in enough playmakers on offense? The run and shoot is something that needs to be kind of cooked up and left in the oven for a little while before it's ready to be eaten at the table. So, but I'm excited with everything happening right now, and time will tell what goes down for sure.
Yeah, that's the proof in the pudding, right? Once they get on the field, come whatever the date is, late in August, come this fall. All right, we'll take a quick break. Second half coming your way. We'll get our guy Tanner on the pod when we return.
This is Hawaii Football Now from ESPN Honolulu.
All right, second half time. We got our guy Tanner Haworth in the house, in the ESPN Honolulu studios. You are very familiar with him if you listen to like anything ESPN Honolulu does. So we're pumped to get him on the show. He's a big time recruiting follower and knows this stuff better than we do. So we got Tanner. On. Tanner, your initial thoughts so far with the 4 guys they've signed as of 9:39 a.m. here.
First of all, glad to be on the podcast, longtime listener. So I'm glad to, finally get on here with you guys. When I'm looking at this class, I'm a big fan of the signing of Domata Peko Jr. That was a guy that we expected to see back on early signing period day, alongside his cousin, Vaifanua Peko. I think they were both expected to gray shirt back in December, but Domata, took that choice to, hold off a little bit. And for him, it seemed to work out because now it sounds like he is going to be signing and not going to be delaying his enrollment to the university, which is what the gray shirt is for people that don't know. That's just like, enroll later. And it's basically like a red shirt, but I don't know past that. But what's nice is you're going to see him. He'll probably redshirt, in my opinion. I think he should. When you've got a guy playing defensive end and he's 6'5", 215. I'm sure Cody Cook is going to be all over him in the weight room, trying to get as much muscle on him as possible, try to make him look a little bit more like Domata Peko Sr., at least a little bit. So I'm glad to see him go in there. Seeing the focus on depth at defensive back is also something really good, because I think when you look at Hawaii's defense last year, I could just say the defense was really just a main issue in general, just because of just the amount of people that transferred out, along with a weak recruiting class last year, just due to the fact that Timmy Chang just did not have enough time, and just a weak class from Todd Graham's early signing period from last season. So seeing a lot of these guys, especially JUCO guys, like a DeMarco Morer, who last year had 9 interceptions by himself. That's surely something really impressive to see. DeLion Freeman, the high school product out of Georgia, he reached out to Abe, gave him his film. Abe was impressed, went all the way out to Georgia just to visit him. And so it's nice to see, not only are we reaching California, Texas, we're going all the way out to Georgia. We're committed to getting out there. And, that says a lot about, Abe and how a great job he does recruiting for the university. And so, excited to see a lot of depth definitely being resolved here, not only in last signing period, the early signing period, but today as well.
Yeah, I abide by the strict policy that the more Pecos you can have on your team, the better. So I'm glad we
got
doubled
two.
up. I'm glad we've doubled up on our number of Pecos for the program here. Yeah, I'm excited about him as well. That's something that Hunter and I talked about. Is just the sheer amount of defensive backs that they've brought in, and I think you kind of touched on it, Tanner. But some guys who, like a junior college guy like Moore, who more than likely I would imagine is going to make an immediate impact. And then you got some guys like Ezekiel Rodriguez or even Freeman, right? That may be a little bit more of a developmental guy, right? They're gonna bring them along, and you put a lot of faith, obviously, in Abel Memian to develop guys. One, to identify talent, and then two, to develop as well. And so is it just, look, hey, try to stock up on as much talent as possible when it comes to that, because they really they've really sort of loaded up on that position there, a position that, quite honestly, they relied on a lot of portal guys last season to kind of fill some gaps.
And not only is it good for Abe, by the way, it's also great for the leader of the Misfits himself, Josh Brown, safeties coach. So I'm sure he's really excited. Not only have we recruited cornerback, we've recruited safety as well. And you're looking for stars, obviously. I think we got that guy last signing period with Cam Stone out of Wyoming. I think he's going to be a great guy. We have a lot of really good safeties when you think about it. We have Matangi Thompson, who I'm pretty sure retains the red shirt from last year because he only played in the first 4 games of the season. We got Peter Manuma, who was stellar the entire year. Meki Pei had a couple of really great reps at safety as well. And then when you look at recruiting wise, especially because when I'm focusing on safeties, you have Justin Sinclair, who I believe was one of the best safeties coming out of JUCO. You have I think DeMarco Moore is also a safety when he comes out, but he might be more of like a nickel guy, because when I was looking at a lot of his highlights, he was definitely more down the field than anything. But when you look at Euro's defense, they do like to incorporate kind of that nickel guy who plays safety but can come down to play kind of in that linebacker area. I think it's really smart to get as much depth as possible, because when you look at Hawaii's defense and our starters, immediately the guys that first come to my mind as starters, you have Verdell Edwards, you got JoJo Forrest, and maybe Mackenzie Barnes, who we didn't see last year due to a season-ending injury in, I think this was spring practice or right before. This could have been fall camp, because I remember being at that practice when he, I think, ruptured his Achilles, I believe. So we might see a lot more of him, another Arizona guy, maybe to see some more time. But like I said, other than those 3 guys alongside Cam Bell, those are our 4 cornerbacks that I feel good about, that I know about too. So a lot of these guys are young. A lot of these guys can be molded. And I think there's a lot of really great talent that we acquired. A guy from early signing period, Elijah Palmer, who was an All-American, participated in the All-American game out of the nickel spot. So I think when you're out there, I think they're aware of who they have. I think right now what we need more than stars is the depth that we are acquiring at both the corner and the safety spot, as well as a little bit of nickel, because I think right now, other than Kalana Makaula, that's the really only guy that I can think of that really fulfills that kind of, I think it was called like the spur back with Todd. I'm not sure what we called it last season, but it's that, third linebacker / nickel spot. Kalana Makaula is the only guy that really comes to my brain when I think of a guy like that.
Yeah, no, that's good. And kind of off of a similar topic, when you look at all of these guys that are coming in, there's only so many spots for these guys. And not only do you create depth, but then you also create competition, which I like from a fan perspective, that we're not sitting idly by, that we're trying to win now. And when you bring guys in that are hungry, willing to jump from other schools in conference, not just JUCO guys looking for a chance to jump up and make an impact, but people looking at like what we're doing here in Hawaii, like at Wyoming, and jumping over here, like in that 1DB's instance, it gets you excited, or at least it gets me excited for what is potentially out there. But the other thing I want to get to is this. With some of the guys, I'm mainly thinking of Meki Pay and Peter Monuma, who have kind of surfaced as stars for us on defense. I wonder if the competition might even weed guys like that out, who we've come to love. And the story obviously with Peter Monuma, specifically with his mom and being courageous and just fighting through this last year. If you bring in these guys, if maybe they aren't given a chance to play just because there's other guys that are better. I don't know. What do you think about that?
I think one of the more popular phrases a lot of people love to say, iron sharpens iron.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't bring in viable competition, what's there to spur you on in practice other than, oh, well, yeah, I get a start on Saturday. I don't really got to worry about anything. If you're not worried about your own spot, how are you improving yourself on a day-to-day basis? I think that requires a lot of, dedication on yourself. And I think the easiest way to do that is to bring in competition like the one that we're bringing in recruiting wise. A lot of these guys I'm really excited for, obviously Meki Pay, Peter Monuma, but we know how good they can be, but they can still be better. And that's what I'm really excited for, is that not only do they have this offseason to really improve on their skills, they got a lot of these guys that are out there with chips on their shoulders out of the JUCO spots that were all Americans. They know how good they are. You got a guy like DeMarco Maurer. He caught interceptions last year. You're just going to come in and they're going to tell you, oh yeah, you're probably going to be a backup. They're probably coming in telling you, hey, you have a lot of really great talent. You can start on this team. We got another really great talented guy like Peter Monuma at our starting safety spot. You and him are going to be fighting with each other for that starting spot. And like I said, iron sharpens iron. I think that's going to be a lot of really great experience for this team going into spring practice next week, summer camp, and fall camp.
Yeah, I think it's, I'm going to focus on number 33, Peter Monuma. We'll see how long he keeps that number, because he's going to be single digits pretty soon, I'm sure.
Unless he likes 33.
That's true. Yeah, it's kind of a DB safety hard-hitting number. But I look at someone like that, and one of Jordan and I's New Year's resolutions for the program, that if we're in the interest of giving them ourselves, I don't know if we have that power, but we wanted Hawaii to land a name, image, and likeness deal for one of our starters. And I look at someone like Peter Monuma with the story, his freshman year, our program, our fans came around him, very much was a household name for us. He's got that Troy Polamalu hair rolling back there, and it just fits with our brand with University of Hawaii, famous safeties in the past. I think of someone like Nate Jackson, and kind of a hard-hitting guy like that, just tough-nosed. I look at local kid as well. That's also really great. We need people like that to play well on the long haul. And so I look at it that, yes, we obviously want him to grow and mature and play better football, but we're also looking at it from a marketing standpoint of wanting guys like him to succeed here at University of Hawaii, because it does help the brand overall. Would you agree with something like that?
Yeah, of course. I agree with that. I got two things on that. One, people are already looking at him. We already know that. I think it was The Athletic. They put out a all freshman team for the FBS, and he was named, first team all freshman. So there's already national eyes already looking at him. We know that. We're Hawaii. We are to what some people would call a stepping stone. We have a lot of really great talent. We got a guy like Nick Mardner, who right now is playing for the University of Auburn. So I think when you look at our team, we have a lot of really great raw talent that we're always excited to have, like Peter Monuma. Tylan Hines is another guy, obviously, that we are expecting to see a huge year, I think, next year, especially how great of a year he had alongside Dedrick Parson. Peter Monuma, will get the recognition that he deserves, but something that also really helps, especially defensive guys, get recognition like that are W's. And last year, only getting 3 of those things is not gonna get you a lot of national recognition. Obviously,
especially for coaches. Sammy
right.
needs wins.
Exactly. And obviously, some of our local guys are going to get those kind of, cool deals. Defend Hawaii has been, supporting a lot of these local boys. I saw Tama got a deal with one of the local banks. I think it was I can't remember the one off the top of my head, but he posted about it on his Instagram. He was holding up a credit card in his jersey and all that stuff. So I know Tama got a deal, but I agree. I mean, we got to find a way to somehow market guys like Monoma out there, but also at the same time be yeah, but he's ours.
Yeah, that's the key, right? You want them to be able to capitalize on their name, image, likeness, and get some of that exposure, but not to the extent where the big boys, I guess.
Yeah, we don't want Texas out here being yeah, but you can get $13 million here. Unless you're Florida, then you can say that and then be oh, what do you mean? No, we never said that.
I know. What a wild story that was. Rashada, Arizona State, where did he end up?
Yeah,
something like that.
Shout out to Jalen Rashada, who just signed to Arizona State.
Yeah, got out of that Florida deal. You mentioned Tylen Hines. We've been kind of talking about the defense quite at length, but on the offensive side, and obviously there's been no offensive guys in this recruiting cycle, but or recruiting period, but a handful of guys in the first signing period. It's a little different animal, I think, especially when we talk about the defensive side, right? The more talent, the better. You talked about guys competing, making each other better. Hunter's mentioned a little bit, right? The run and shoot. You really kind of have a core, especially in the skill position guys, not a whole lot of free flowing substitutions or anything like that. How do you sort of pair that up with what they've done on the offensive side of the ball in terms of recruiting and what we've now learned as to what the offensive identity should be?
I think when I'm looking at the offense, what we have right now is, I think, something that we can mold. I caught the back end of what Hunter was talking about in terms of not really recruiting a lot for wide receivers. I think the wide receivers that we have, I think they really have the potential to become real stars for the University of Hawaii, especially in that run and shoot. Obviously, we know about Jalen Walthall, Jonah Pinoke, Tamato Mokiao Timalala. But I think guys like the Alex Perrys, the Chucky Hineses, the Nick Senecals, the guys that we saw only play a couple of games last year so that they could retain that redshirt freshman status. I think those guys can become real stars for the University of Hawaii. And when you look at the guys we signed, I think it was the sprinter from New Zealand, Osei Nketia. We don't know if he could really catch the ball yet, because obviously, a sprinter, you don't really need to catch a ball. But I think he's going to be a guy that we can maybe see in the future start to become kind of like a guy that we could throw the ball down to, with the lack of Zion Bowens now in this offense. Our wide receivers, I'm not worried about, because I think we can mold them. I think Timmy is, he was a former wide receivers coach and a tight ends coach. He can help. He can help Ursua with that, and I know he's getting outside help too from other former University of Hawaii players in that room as well. The one room that I'm excited to see get a little bit of attention was that offensive lineman room. You lose a lot of really great leaders. You lose El Manning. You lose Micah Vanderpool. You lose Stephen Bernal-Wynn. You lose a lot of seniors. But when I look at the class that we got coming in, the 4 kids that we got, we have the high school product, Caleb Jackson Carter, who is very similar to El Manning. You have the one JUCO, Freddie Pelling, who is just a beast of a person. You hope that can, that can translate to quality starting time. You have Josh Atkins, the transfer from the University of Houston, as well as Isaac Maungaleo'o, who I can't remember if he's gray shirting or not, out of Campbell, who is also a monster human being, especially when you put him right side Jaren Keave Sangapolutele. out of Campbell. I'm excited to see this room just kind of develop, because right now when I'm looking at this offensive line, that's going to be the main focus, I think, next year when you're looking at improvement of this football team. Because last year we had some actual, in my opinion, quality offensive line play for much of the year last year. Take out the first couple of weeks. I think a lot of Hawaii football fans automatically did that, put the Vanderbilt, put the Western Kentucky into the subconscious and focus on Mountain West play there. But we had a lot of really great times where Braden Shager didn't get really sacked a lot last year, especially in the middle of that season. And when you look at that line, you got returners like Solo Vaipulu, who, somehow returned, who's somehow returning. But, you do what you got to do. You got Liki Tonuvasa, who's also returning. You got guys who got quality playing time, like Maurice Ta'ala, like Sergio Muastau, that did play a lot last year in lieu of Liki due to an injury. So that's what I'm going to be focusing on for much of this offseason, as well as going into the regular season next year. Is Roman Sapolu going to develop this line in a way that they can have like a bounce back year from last year? Because I'm not expecting them to improve, but what I am expecting to see from this room is at least some kind of consistency that at times for the University of Hawaii, we did not see from that offensive line. I think also especially at the tackle spots, because Noah Manning was really good, but he also had a lot of random lapses that tended to happen, whether it be false starts, whether it be the unsportsmanlike conducts, or the other tackle spot with Hop, where he was serviceable, but that was obviously the weakest part of our line from last year. So I'm hoping that we can find a way to kind of replace our tackles, because that's kind of one of the most important positions in all of football are those tackle spots, because the most talented pass rushers are coming from the outside.
Yeah, no, it's really good, Tan. When you look at the first recruiting class of a coach, this first full year is usually the most scrutinized and really the most important if you look at a coach's tenure at a specific university. I just think back to our coaches in the past. Coach Chow's first recruiting class included Marcus Kemp, who is still number 85 for the Kansas City Chiefs. Rolo in his first recruiting class included Cole McDonald, which we all know what happened with Cole in the run and shoot at University of Hawaii. And so you can't help but dream and wonder a little bit with this recruiting class and think, could the next great University of Hawaii player be in this class of guys? And I did want to get to this, though. Would you agree that the effort put from this coaching staff has been phenomenal? I mean, look at where these guys have come from just for a second. I mean, it literally spans the globe. We haven't, at least from our point of view, left any stone unturned of bringing guys in. It's pretty remarkable what these guys have been able to do in the first year.
Yeah, I agree full-heartedly. We got New Zealand, we got American Samoa, we got California, Texas, England. Georgia, England. We went all the way past the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, I think looking at this squad, the coaching staff did an amazing job, in my opinion. And much to say, there's still a lot more work to be done. I mean, there's still another transfer portal window in the future. After all the spring practices are over, they do have another transfer portal window open for the guys that are like, oh, I got no chance here. I'm going to go somewhere else. And, I'm fully expecting to see that from our own team, because we've already seen a couple of guys in the last couple of weeks transfer away. I think it was the freshman junior Ta'ase who most recently entered the transfer portal, which is, sucks to see for the offensive lineman room to see a young guy go. But maybe it was a whole matter of, not really meshing with them that Roman wants to run. Because what we do know about this offensive line room is that Roman Sapolu isn't scared about moving you all over the place to find you the best position. And, not to go back into my tangent of talking about the offensive line room, but sorry about that. But this coaching staff has done an amazing job. I agree wholeheartedly. And I think the first thing to look at is seeing Abe Elamimian return to that recruiting coordinator, because back when he was with Todd Graham, he was just a secondaries coach. And then in the last year, we're going to move him to running backs coach. And, our running backs did really well that year, I will like to say, with Day Hunter, Calvin Turner. They both had really great years. And Dedrick Parson, not to mention. So maybe Abe Elamimian is secretly a really good running backs coach, alongside being a good quarterbacks coach and recruiting coordinator. But seeing him, return to just being out there and, getting in touch with not only the California guys, because we saw that pretty much immediately last year, where as soon as Timmy Chang returned, you saw immediately from his Twitter, I was like, headed out to California, guys. And now you see this year, he went all the way out to Georgia, all the way out to the southeast, a place that's really only out there for those SEC or those Sunbelt schools. So it's awesome to see just the vast, not only the net over the Pacific, we're putting a net over the entire world out there. We're putting a net over the late night football television out there, because what else are you going to be watching in the regular season at 10 o'clock at night when you're living in the middle of the U.S.? I'm sure you'll find a way to illegally stream the University of Hawaii, because you don't know how else to watch college football when you don't know what to do. So I think the coach staff did amazing. There's still a lot of work to be done. Like I said, this whole window for the National Signing Day is open until a month or two from now. So they got a lot of time to sign these guys, and a lot of time to get guys, who are going to be walk-ons. So there's a lot of work to be done. I'm excited about this team. I'm excited about this coaching staff, and I can't wait for next week for spring practice, even though technically it's still winter in some places. I guess you take that up with Punxsutawney Phil.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, right? The old Roloism, like, just come here. You can. It doesn't snow. You don't have to worry about that when you're going through off-season.
Although
training.
it was a little cold last week.
Relative.
Yeah.
Relative. I think we're all in agreement, though. I would agree with you guys. Like, they've gotten better. Like, the roster has been upgraded with these 30 signees. I don't think there's really any. I don't think we're going out on a limb by saying that, but I do feel pretty confident. Like, look, the roster has been upgraded.
Yeah. And what's also really exciting to think about is we got two guys that are pending NCAA appeals to return for an extra year. We have, I think it was the transfer Micah Maria Terangi he's originally from Kahuku, I believe. I think he came out of Virginia. I can't remember where he came from.
I think you're right. But
I think the biggest one to be looking at, I actually was out here. I was out there snooping to see more information about this. John Tuitupo is out there seeking that NCAA appeal, and they're currently still in the processing motion of that appeal process. So I've heard that John Tuitupo is out there practicing still. So might be to look on as we head out into the regular season in a couple of months from now. 200 days from now?
It's not long from now. We're about 20 Hawaii Football Now episodes or something like that before we really get into it. Dude, if they can get Tuitupo back, that'd be huge. Anchor that defensive line in there,
especially when you got a guy like Daniel Sauce Williams coming out from JUCO.
Yeah, some big boys out there. Hey, Tanner, we appreciate it, man. This has been a lot of fun. We won't wait so long to get you back out here. There'll be a lot to talk about as we get into spring practice, as you mentioned. Get to see some of these new faces in the program on campus, perhaps going through some workouts. A number of these guys won't be there until the summer, but
right.
This is an exciting time. And we are equally as excited to have you debut on the this edition of Hawaii Football Now. So thanks, man.
I appreciate it. And quickly want to shout out John Galvez, Uncle Polutele. Got to shout out the Punahou guys out there. Hopefully he does great out there. Also shout out to my classmate Andre Yosibosh, balling out in Senior Bowl right now. Day two guy in the NFL draft out of Princeton, Andre Yosibosh. Don't forget the name.
He's a stud.
Cut him off before any more Punahou plugs.
Yeah.
Hey, you guys got enough. We got enough Yolani guys here at ESPN Honolulu. We got to get the Punahou people out here.
Hunter and I hold it down for the public school kids.
Right.
You know, we're just a couple of public school guys. So we're oh boy, man, we got guys our producers chiming in the chats, throwing Marino references in there. All right, enough of the ILH talk. We Ezekiel Rodriguez, man, Mililani High School. There we go. We got a public school guy getting in there.
I'm excited for him. I can't wait to see him next year.
Yeah, he's a player, although he did start off at Pac-5. For transferring over,
baby.
Shout out to Pac-5, man.
Shout out to the ILH.
Yeah, I forget exactly. I forget if he was at Marinol or what school he was at before he made the move over to Milan, which I think was a good move for him. Competition wise, it seemed to work out quite nicely. All right, that'll do it for us. We could probably ramble on for another hour or so, but we got to fit the thing. We got to cut this down, fit it in, all the good stuff. Tanner, we appreciate you, man, and we'll catch up soon.
Awesome, shoots, guys.
All right, big thanks to our guy Tanner for joining the show. Big thanks to all the listeners once again dropping us some lines on the comments and whatnot. Quick 2-minute drill to get us on up out of here. Again, we will have more extended recruiting talk next week and get ready for spring practice. It never ends. The cycle just keeps on going. Did want to mention 2024, so current junior, edge guy from Kamehameha Schools, Tristan Waimal Galindo, gave his verbal commitment on Tuesday. Local kid who has said he's going to stay home. Pretty exciting guy on the edge, who can get after the passer. Really player out of Kamehameha in the ILH. So something to keep our eye on. Obviously, a lot can change between now and then. We've seen kids commit, decommit, all that kind of stuff. But hopefully, Tristan Waimal Galindo decides to see through, because I think that'd be another nice local get, and a guy I think that can be impactful if he indeed ends up at the University of Hawaii. So a big one there. Tanner already mentioned offensive lineman Junior Ta'ase has entered the portal. He was a freshman last year as part of the 2022 recruit class. He was a Todd Graham signee in that December period before the transfer or turnover after the Graham resignation into the Chang era. So did want to mention that. I'll wish him all the best. So some guys may be coming in, some guys heading out. But one guy, Marcus Kemp, you mentioned him. You're going back to the Super Bowl. So Hawaii's represented. Hawaii is represented as Marcus Kemp. Marcus Kemp, who got a pass in the AFC Championship game because Patrick Mahomes, I'm pretty sure, has run out of receivers by now. Incredible is Marcus Kemp, who's one of those dudes as a special teams dynamo, getting some run offense. He expected that to happen, but made the most of his opportunity as the Chiefs defeat the Bengals and are off to the Super Bowl. So that'd be pretty cool. We'll definitely be keeping a close eye.
Absolutely. He already has one ring with those guys. I believe at one point last season, he even had a captain patch on his jersey.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just like go gadget there at the Chiefs, literally on, I think maybe not field goal, but punt, kickoff return, and punt return. He's on all four of those special teams and has just made a name for himself as a solid guy in the locker room. For those of us that played with him, we all completely agree with that. Marcus was just such a stand-up dude, very focused, very about his business, and stoked to see him at the receiver level too, because as you remember, Jordan, he was phenomenal for us at the wideout spot in those years, kind of from the Norm Chow era, branching over into Rolo those first 2 years. Super stoked for him, still kicking it, battling through injury various times in his career, and going to have a chance at another Super Bowl. It's great for Hawaii. It's great for recruiting pitches. I hope that they are bringing that up at any chance that they can, that one of our alumni is getting a chance at the biggest stage there is. And very interesting with all the receivers going down and him getting time at the wideout spot. So I'm stoked. I hope he gets more of a look at 2 weeks' time in the Super Bowl.
I can't wait, man. I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next week as we sign off here. Again, a big mahalo to Tanner Haworth of ESPN Honolulu for joining us today. A fun discussion on the recruiting angle And who knows, the roster, I'm sure, will be ever evolving as we move throughout the spring. And again, spring practice is right around the corner. All right, that'll do it for us. We'll see you guys next week here on Hawaii Football Now. Again, a big mahalo to our sponsors, Spectrum Mobile and Hawaii USA Federal Credit Union. We'll see you next week, everybody. Aloha.
You've been listening to Hawaii Football Now with Jordan Helle and Hunter Hughes, all from ESPN Honolulu.